This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Make it clear that the views expressed by our host are not the official stance of MBR views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Good knowing exactly where to go with the football.
All right, welcome in, everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, giving veterans a voice for an extremely long time. If you'd like to know more about Military Broadcast Radio, please scan that QR code down here at the bottom of my screen. It'll let you know a little bit more about them, what they do, what they stand for, as well as if you would like to potentially donate, you are more than welcome to. It is a special night because I have a returning guest by the name of Sam Sprunger, and since Sam Sprunger is going to be joining us tonight, that means we are going to talk college football. So I hope everybody's excited. I know I'm excited. Let's get started into it.
Interview of the week sponsored by LTD Tactical.
All right, Sam, buddy, welcome in.
What's up?
How are you, good sir?
It is a fabulous evening. I don't know where you're at. I know where you're at, but anybody else it's beautiful out. It is an amazing night out. So I'm in a good mood. Just watched some Little League baseball. So always in a good mood whenever I can do that. And then go talk some college sports. So
all right.
That's kind of what I do. Tony.
What you do? Is that what we do now? I mean, it's the Midwest. We don't get that much good weather in the summertime. So we gotta try to take advantage of it whenever we can.
If there's not tornadoes or floods, we're getting ready for football.
Yeah, we are. Exactly. So we do have a jam-packed show tonight because we have a lot of interesting things that have popped up. I know it is the off season for college football. However, there's still some pretty good topics. So what we're going to cover tonight, we're going to cover USC trying to get out of its very first matchup against LSU in the first game of this season. Our thoughts on that. We're also going to talk about with the dissolution of the Pac-12. The Big Ten has 4 new teams coming into it. Who do we think is going to have the quickest success out of those 4? And then to end the show, we are going to talk about who is going to be the person or the team to give Ohio State the biggest run for its money as far as taking the Big Ten back. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't see anybody else doing it except for one team, maybe. But we'll dive into that here in a little bit.
Sure.
So we'll get started, though, with USC trying to get out of its very first game this season against LSU. And for anybody that doesn't know, USC has been trying to get out of this for the last 2 years. Lincoln Riley, actually, when he first came to USC to be the head coach, did not want to be a part of this game or play it. I don't know if it's maybe because he was afraid of the competition. He was also rumored to want to take the LSU job prior to Brian Kelly taking the position as well. Said that he wasn't interested in going to LSU. He was interested in staying in Oklahoma, and then just a few short turnaround later, he ends up going to USC.
Reminds me of Nick Saban. I will not be the next head coach at Alabama. And an hour and a half later, he was on a plane to Tuscaloosa.
Exactly. It even is so bad to the point that USC even had Fox Sports start to step in to try to stop some of this. So, Sam, let me ask you, what's your thoughts on USC trying to get out of playing LSU? And we have our very first ever new Big Ten versus the SEC matchup starting this coming season.
Well, it's a couple of things. I mean, let's say, first off, at least it's not one of those that they've just been trying to do it in the last couple of months. They've been trying for a while, but here's the thing. We're to the point where schedules are set. Let's what are they going to do? I mean, are they going to drop LSU and pick up Sacramento State? Which one's going to look better? A 10-point loss to LSU or a 55-point drubbing of Sacramento State? And I don't know that's who they would choose. I'm just choosing a very a team that they would inevitably win by 50 points over. Which one's going to look better? I know they're trying to save a little bit of face because they've got Michigan. They go to Washington. They play at UCLA. They play against Notre Dame. They've got a schedule that could net them 2 to 3 losses other than LSU.
Yep.
I know they're trying to save face and say, okay, we got to do what we can to. This is going to be the first year a 3-loss team's going to make the playoffs. We're pretty much sure that's going to happen because there's 12 teams, but 4 losses you're probably playing with fire there. You're tempting fate. So I know they're trying to probably save face and maybe hopefully not have to worry about that. But at the same time, which one's going to look better? How about you don't lose your games?
Yes.
If you're worried about, losing games, how about you just don't? I mean, I know that's duh, but if you've got to worry about one game against LSU keeping you out of the playoff, you've got bigger problems in your schedule than just LSU. So, it doesn't bother me that they're trying to find or get out of it. Teams do that all the time. They've been trying, but we're at the point now that we're what, 2 months away from it?
Yeah,
3 months away from it. Let's just play the schedule.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too, and I do wonder if maybe on the back end this will end up kind of sorting itself out. And what I mean by that is, obviously USC's first game inside the Big Ten, it's going to be aired on ABC and ESPN. So I would assume that they're going to have to pay Fox Sports a little bit of royalties or money because the fact they own the media rights to USC, which honestly, that has to happen all the time anyway. And more than likely, even like what we've seen the last couple of years with Texas versus Bama, very first year they had it. It was on Fox. The very next year it was on ESPN. So they're probably going to do some of these trading back and forth, just like they do with the NFL with CBS.
It happens.
Fox. Like it happens. They probably get a payout. Some of it may even be, hey, we'll take this game. You get this game as far as interests go and whatnot. So that might be the case.
And it says it's a home game. Is it in? I know it's in LA, but is it at the Coliseum or is it at?
It's in Vegas.
Oh, okay. So it's not. They're the home
neutral
team, so it's not even. It's not even a home game.
Correct.
And so that probably is why ABC's getting it because it's the kickoff special. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So you have that all the time to where, if it's the home team, usually the visiting conferences broadcast gets the broadcast, unless of course it's 2 Big Ten teams or 2 SEC teams. But like with that, it's ABC paid money to have it for primetime on September 1st. They paid money for that. Granted, they'll have another game, I'm sure, if USC is able to get out of this. But what does that say? I mean, what is the validity? I know they've been trying, but what have they said why they want to get out of this game?
It doesn't say why. So this is according to Saturday Down South, which is a college football news article, pretty reliable source. I've even seen a few, big time media guys use it. According to this, it just says that when Lincoln Riley became the head coach, he didn't want the game, according to multiple sources. Even as late as last fall, Jen Cohen was hired away from Washington to be the new USC athletic director. The USC administration was still trying to get out of the game, including offering other opponents to LSU. And at one point, Fox Sports got involved to try to further the process. And the network wasn't enamored with the idea of USC's first game as a Big Ten member being broadcasted by rival ABC/ESPN.
Who cares? I am so tired of that. Who cares? You're making billions off of these teams. Well, the first game as a Big Ten. Who cares? I am so tired of that.
Are you saying, and you know how much each school is going to make because they're playing in this game?
Yeah.
They're going to each earn $5 million
That's just
from the Las Vegas Bowl. And this was scheduled in August of 2021. This was scheduled almost 3 years ago, 4 months before they even hired Lincoln Riley. So, I mean, you signed the deal you knew this was coming up. You didn't have to sign this deal.
Well, and I don't care. I honestly don't care that USC's first game as a Big Ten team is going to be on ABC. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I would highly doubt anybody, including the Fox executives, are going to actually lose sleep over that. Really? Come on.
Yeah, I highly doubt it. And it was probably one of those, maybe they tried to look into it like, hey, could we potentially get them out of this? Could we do a trade? Could we do a buyout? And in all honesty, let's look at this too. If I'm USC and I'm Lincoln Riley, this isn't as bad as what it probably looked like 3 years ago. Because
absolutely. Yeah.
Because LSU, ended up getting Jaden Daniels. He's gone. USC doesn't have Caleb Williams anymore. Both teams lost a lot as far as the draft and whatnot goes. They both have new defensive coordinators because last year the defenses were like wet paper bags. Anybody could go through them with absolutely no problem. And LSU is only favored by 6.5, which, let's be realistic, for college, that's still pretty damn close. And
let's be realistic, we're in June. That's gonna change by September 1st.
Yes. And looking at it, it's like, to me, honestly, this game could go either way. I don't really know who USC's main backup is. I didn't really see him play much or remember much. I did see a little bit of Garrett Nussmeier for LSU play in the bowl game against Wisconsin. He looked pretty decent. I think he'll have a fairly good season. But again, this is still going to be a fairly new team coming in for both. I don't really see the problem. And to your point, you've expanded to 12 teams. It's not like, oh man, if I get one loss, I'm in trouble. You can have 2 or 3 losses.
Probably 3 total.
Yeah.
And the thing is if USC's good, if they've recovered, and by the way, they've got 5 quarterbacks on their roster right at this moment. Isaac Ward is a junior. But he's only 5'10". Then you have Gage Roy, who is a sophomore, Miller Moss, who is a sophomore, and Jake Jensen, who's a sophomore, and then they have a freshman, Malachi Nelson, that's coming in. So of those 5, if you have the elder statesman who's a junior, I don't know Isaac Word, so I don't know how good he is. But anyways, my point being is if USC is better than they have been, last year was a horrible record-wise season for them. But if they're back to slightly less than elite, let's say 2 years ago when they were, knocked out of the playoffs by losing in the Pac-12 championship to Utah. Okay. If they're that good, they're not going to need to worry about whether or not they're playing LSU and if they lose.
Right.
They're going to win. They're going to lose 3 games and they're going to end up in the playoff, especially as part of the Big Ten.
Yes.
And with 3 losses, one of the better teams in the Big Ten. Maybe not a Big Ten championship game team, but one of the better.
Right. But nonetheless, though, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about if USC may or may not be the big team that has the quickest success, but we'll find out right after this break.
The fact that our patriotism in America is dwindling, I really wanted to start the American AF movement. Freedom is fragile, very fragile. It takes a certain level of intestinal fortitude to stand up and say and do the right thing to preserve the freedoms that so many have paid a large price for. About being in the military, and that recruiter said, it's not Biden's army, it's your army, it's his army, it's his army, it's all of our army.
American tactical. American as
All right, welcome back in, everyone, to Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, giving veterans a voice. Back here with Sam Springer to talk more college football. And so, with that, if anybody doesn't know, Sam Springer and I actually do a show called Big Talk, B1G Talk, where we talk all college sports, but mainly focused on the Big Ten itself, primarily focusing on football and men's and women's college basketball and whatnot for the Big Ten. So
we talk about it all, but those are the three that we concentrate on.
Exactly. Those are kind of the three main strengths that Sam Springer, myself, and Dalton Shetler all know. Unfortunately, though, Dalton Shelter is the one that earns the big bucks. He's the one that gets to take all the fancy vacations.
He knows everything too. Like
I know.
I think he's forgotten more than you and I know. Period.
Probably, more than likely. But nonetheless, Sam and I, we bring the entertainment. We also bring the looks, even though Dalton's also, he's got some looks, but Sam and I bring more of the looks nonetheless.
I'm just a pretty face.
I'm just the pretty face around here. That's all I am. And some comedic relief.
That's right. I'll try anyways.
But we have 4 new teams coming into the Big Ten. We have USC, we have UCLA, we have Washington, and we have Oregon. So, Sam, to you, out of those 4, who do you think has the quickest success coming into the Big Ten? And especially now with the Big Ten getting rid of its divisions, which is a little bit of a help, but for the most part, by schedule-wise, by the looks of it, they're still kind of in the Big Ten West, which is where we figured they would probably end up being anyway. Who do you have having the quickest success?
Oregon. I really, Dalton and I have even talked about this is we feel that of the 4 teams, they're going to be the most acclimated to adjust to what the Big Ten has to, how they play their style. They have a history of playing some Big Ten teams in their regular season, most notably the last 2 home and home with Ohio State a few years back. And so they do have a history of that. And you know what, they're a really good program. They're very well recruited. They're very disciplined. They get beat occasionally by teams that can really put points on the board because their defense is their most suspect part of their team. But at the same time, they're getting ready to step into a conference that the conference hasn't seen Oregon either. You know what I mean? Like they haven't seen the Big Ten defenses and the Big Ten environments. Well, the Big Ten hasn't seen Oregon yet either. So I think Oregon is going to have the best opportunity to compete at the top 4 of the conference from the get, right straight out of the chute.
Yeah, I agree. And I even look at it too. To me, UCLA may take a little bit of a step back with the fact of they lost Chip Kelly, who's now the offensive coordinator for Ohio State.
Makes almost this much sense to me. I don't get it, but whatever. It's all him.
Yeah, right. It is one of those, because let's look at this too. I mean, when he was at Oregon, he was an offensive mastermind as far as running the team goes. But then he goes to Philadelphia for the NFL. He actually has pretty decent success. Yeah. Now he trades everybody away.
He still succeeded for the most part there.
He succeeded for the most part. He ends up getting fired, midway through his 3rd season. He gets the boot. He ends up going to San Francisco to take over post Jim Harbaugh. That's an absolute disaster. And then he returns to the college ranks with UCLA. And I'll be honest, it's not like UCLA was bad, but they always seem to be kind of middle of the pack. Now, he did develop pretty good defensive players for the most
And
part.
this last year, they were pretty good.
Yeah. And,
in UCLA standards for football.
And especially for the pack. And I mean, Dorian Thompson Robinson wasn't bad either. I mean, he was an okay fill-in for the Browns this past offseason in the NFL. But overall, there was nothing really Chip Kelly did for UCLA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was really nothing though that sat there and was like, man, he's really what's kind of rebuilding this UCLA brand kind of back to prominence. It's like, okay. So for him, maybe going to Ohio State, because we've seen a lot of really good coaches kind of go back to being coordinators. They go back to a winning culture. They probably see things, okay, hey, this is what we used to do. This is something new. And most notably, as much as I, not a fan of the college itself, I have to give respect to Nick Saban. How many coaches did he do that with his career as far as, hey, I'm going to make Lane Kiffin relevant again. I'm going to make, Bill O'Brien a decent coach again and whatnot. Who else?
Sarkisian.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian. I mean, he
left in dramatic fashion from Washington and kind of needed to rebuild his brand, and now look at him. So
yeah. So it may not be a bad thing. Chip may be doing that with Ryan Day, and who knows, because I know you and I and Dalton have all talked about this with how restless Ohio State fans are if they don't beat
head coach in waiting.
Yeah, if they don't at minimum beat Michigan, if they don't at minimum beat them, I think they call for Ryan Day's job, which
I live in the heart. I live in the heart of Ohio State.
Yes,
country.
you do.
And there is, I mean, of everybody that I've talked to, they have no influence on whether it comes true or not.
Right.
But B, don't want it to happen. And C, believe without a doubt if Ryan Day loses to Michigan, he's fired this year.
Yeah. And I mean, to a point, I get it.
Ludicrous. No, I don't know. I absolutely not. The man wins 93% of his games. I get it. You go through streaks that you don't beat your rival, but you don't cut your nose off in spite of your face. You just don't do it.
That's true. But again, you have to remember too, one of the absolute biggest rivalries, if not the biggest rivalry in college football, and you've lost to them 3 years in a row. 3.
The Yankees. Joe Torre didn't lose his job because they lost 4 straight to the Red Sox, and because when they were up 3-0 in the ALCS back in 2004.
True.
That's the biggest rivalry in all of sports, and I'll argue with anybody about it. I mean, not to say that it's the best rival to me personally, but if you go back in history, that is one of historically the greatest rivalries in all of sports ever. And the man did not lose his job because he lost 4 straight.
But nonetheless, though, I do think that, like you said, Chip is maybe potentially there and waiting. Although I'm going to be honest, depending on what Ohio State's able to do, because again, just with the spring game, I know that's equivalent to preseason, so there's really not a lot you can take from that. I'm kind of sitting there thinking
it's a glorified practice. You know that too.
Exactly. I'm like, Will Howard's not really standing out to me. Cam Brown is not really standing out, or Devin Brown is not really standing out to me. And then the freshman that they also got wasn't really standing out to me. So like, and I'm gonna be honest, I thought the same thing last year when it was Devin Brown and Kyle McCord. I'm like, both these guys look the exact same, and the reports were coming out. They also look the exact same.
And let's call it what it was. Kyle McCord was not that bad of a quarterback.
He was not. And I mean, realistically, last year for the season that he had, if it wasn't for the fact he was having to live post Justin Fields and CJ Stroud back to back, he would probably still be the quarterback.
He'd still be in Columbus.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. It was those two guys' fault that Kyle McCord now plays for Syracuse.
Literally. Because you think Justin got him to a national title, kept him in close games. CJ had absolutely unbelievable years, the years that he started.
CJ Stroud should have beaten Georgia. Like, they should have beaten Georgia.
Yes.
That's how close CJ Stroud had them to the national championship game. And if they beat Georgia, they win the national championship. There's 100%. No convincing me that TCU wins that game.
No, not at all. 100%. So we got UCLA post Chip Kelly, new head coach.
Real quick about Chip Kelly. I think he also saw the writing on the wall that it wasn't going to get better for UCLA going into the Big Ten.
Oh, 100%. Because you have to think about it. Even if they did keep divisions as far as the Big Ten West goes, you still have to
fifth or sixth best team in the division.
Yeah, even if say he sweeps the other two Pac-12 teams in USC and Washington, you ain't beating Oregon, and then you have to deal offense or not. You're not beating Iowa's defense. You may keep it close against Wisconsin.
Iowa may actually have a little bit of an offense this year.
That's true. It's possible. Then, of course, you've got Nebraska with Matt Rule. I mean, they didn't have a great year last year, but
and they've got a big, huge quarterback coming in.
Raiola.
Yeah, Raiola
Raiola.
coming in from because his dad played there. He switched from Georgia to Nebraska at the last minute, and he should be better or as good as advertised. Let's say it that way.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be expected at Nebraska. So yeah, if I'm UCLA, I'm like
Purdue's in that division too. If they would have kept it.
That's true. Are we worried about Purdue in football though?
You
Basketball,
should be.
I'll make that argument.
Hudson Card is still a good quarterback.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's got one more year yet.
Okay. I figured he'd have left or he'd have
what, because
been an undrafted free agent. Yeah.
Just because everybody else left.
Exactly. And then I don't know how you feel about Washington, but I think Washington's going to have a really bad year with Kalen DeBoer leaving. I think every single player on both offense and defense at national title game left, or at least I think everybody on offense did.
I think even if DeBoer would have stayed at Washington, they would have taken a huge step back because, like you said, they just you would have had people leaving in the portal. That just would have happened. Plus, you had Penix leaving. You had there were a Dunze is gone. There are a ton like a huge. They honestly, of the four teams coming into the Big Ten, they're the ones that are going to be the worst, I think, of the four. And that's even with UCLA, losing Kelly and stuff like that. I just think Washington is going to struggle the most.
Yeah, I agree. I have Washington the most. I don't know how well USC does post Caleb Williams, but Lincoln Riley has a good success track as far as developing quarterbacks, so he should be fine. But again, that defense leaves a lot to be questioned, though. But we will take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about our last topic of the night as far as who is going to give Ohio State the biggest run for its money as far as taking control of the Big Ten when we come back.
Introducing LT Defense Tactical Gear, your ultimate solution for top-notch protection and performance in the field. Our armor bundles provide unmatched safety and comfort, while our battle belts and holsters ensure quick and easy access to your gear. Stay prepared for any situation with our high-quality medical supplies, designed to keep you ready for action at all times. Looking to enhance your skills? Our firearms training programs will take your proficiency to the next level. Trust LT Defense for all your tactical gear needs and gear up for success on the battlefield.
Department of Veterans Affairs. For PSAs on the best services available to veterans, go to VA's new radio outreach page, news.va.gov/outreach/radio.
And welcome back to Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, giving a voice to veterans. Sam and I are back to talk about our last topic of the night. Who is going to give Ohio State a run for its money as far as king of the Big Ten Mountain goes? Because let's be honest, when we look at the latest college football rankings, Ohio State, I have seen, has been as high as, I believe, 2, and maybe even as low as 3 or 4, but nonetheless, they are considered one of the top 5 teams in the nation because of what they've been able to do transfer portal-wise and whatnot. They are still a very well-stacked and very well-coached team. Sam, who do you have in the Big Ten that is going to give them the biggest run for their money?
Well, I think we've already talked about it. I do really believe Oregon is going to be that team that really can push Ohio State this year. Dalton and I, again, we've talked about this too, is while we feel they're going to be the most acclimated of the Pac-12 teams that are moving into the Big Ten, we honestly think they could be one that is going to go to Indianapolis to play Ohio State in the championship game and could be the first Big Ten champion from the mega conference that is now the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree. And I've even talked about this with a couple other people before, because to me, when I look at it, I think Dan Lanning is probably not only the fact that he's coming in one of the 4 teams that has its previous head coach still with it. They have a very experienced, talented roster. They didn't really lose a lot of guys in the draft this year. They lost a center/guard. They did lose Bo Nix, and they did lose Troy Franklin at wide receiver. However, they have probably the most experienced wide receiver coming into it, or not wide receiver, experienced quarterback coming into it with Dylan Gabriel taking over. A lot of starts at UCF, a lot of starts at Oklahoma. Now he finishes his career here at Oregon. So there's a lot of potential for Oregon to be that team that can probably, to me, give Ohio State the biggest run for its money. Now,
you talked about really quick. Sorry, you talked about seeing Ohio State be as high as 2, but as low as number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the same as with Oregon. That's why I think it's really very much a possibility that we're looking at
Battle of the O's
outsider coming in and taking the Big Ten title for the first year that they're in the conference, because they're just as highly touted as Ohio State is in a lot of different different rankings.
Yeah, in a lot of different polls. I've seen them pretty much the same way. I've seen pretty much the top 4 teams have been Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas, somehow in that order. For the most part, Georgia has been unanimously number 1, and then the other 3 have kind of been a hodgepodge mix as far
another
as
one that we got to consider too. And it was between Oregon and this team, but Penn State. I know that they kind of folded late last year, but Penn State is one that they've still got Allred. Like Allred's there. He had one. I forget who it was. It was McCarthy, JJ McCarthy. They compared their stats from last year. Almost identical.
Really?
And McCarthy was a top 10 pick, and they're saying, what's wrong with Drew Allred?
I mean, I made this argument though, especially when the draft turned around, because, and this isn't SEC bias. This is just one of those, I didn't really understand the kind of the hype around JJ. The fact that, yes, he went 29-1 as a collegiate starter. He won a national title last year. Michigan went undefeated. He had probably one of, if not, a top 5 offensive line all 3 years. He was basically there at Michigan. He had 2 of the top running backs in Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. And he had a great complementary defense every single year that he was there. The fact that Stetson Bennett basically had the same thing at Georgia for the 2 years that he started for them. He led them to 2 national titles back to back. He only got drafted in the 4th round to the Rams. And yet JJ McCarthy is being touted as, hey, he's going to be the next savior of the Vikings. That's where I was I was really
He
confused.
very well may too, Tony. We don't know
could.
that, but I don't. Honestly, you're comparing. We're talking about this, and I'm looking at Drew Allred and McCarthy being basically the same quarterback, just in different uniforms, almost.
Yeah, but it will be interesting to see. And you and I even talked about it. I think it was McCarthy's. Was it the first season that he took over for Cade McNamara, or was that his second
last
season?
year would have been, or not this last season, not the season they won the national championship, but the year before was the year when they got beat by TCU. Was his first year.
Because you and I had a lot of questions as far as you didn't really see him throw the ball a lot, and even this year,
he didn't throw it in the whole second half against Penn State.
Yeah. And he had 10 completions the whole entire game, the national title game.
Yeah, they didn't need it. Now, granted, they didn't need it,
correct.
But still,
it leaves to me. While you're right, it's one of those if it's broke, don't try to fix it thing. With
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
We can run the ball down people's throats. We have a great defense. It's going to keep you from scoring a lot. We don't really need JJ to throw the ball. We just need him to. When we do, don't make the mistakes. Now, I'll be honest, and you and I talked about this, and we texted about it when it happened this past playoffs, when they faced Alabama, and that very first play looked like an interception, and it ended up being ruled not. To me, that would have been an instant momentum changer for Alabama, and I think Alabama would have won that game.
They still almost did too, Tony. They
did.
Still almost won that game.
Yes, and that's not really a knock against Michigan or Alabama. They were both talented teams. As much as I hate to give that credit to Alabama,
did you throw up in your mouth a little bit right there?
Oh, so much. but nonetheless, it was one of those. I kind of wondered there. Not that they had any less confidence in McCarthy, but I wondered what happened with his own personal confidence then. If they would have had to have him throw the ball more to dig them out, what would have happened? Because while the game isn't necessarily over by that, maybe Alabama scores a touchdown, maybe they kick a field goal. We don't know what may or may not have happened, but nonetheless, it does lead you to wonder. There's not a whole lot of teams that run the ball to try to get themselves out of a hole, especially early on in the game. So what would that have potentially done for the momentum?
Even rushing teams don't do that.
Correct. So it is one of those I kind of wonder, but the slight nonetheless on Stetson Bennett. Not saying Stetson Bennett was any better, but to me, that was probably the closest similarity as far as you looked at an overall talented, stacked team, and the quarterbacks managing them usually don't get as much credit. The only quarterbacks I've ever seen get a lot of credit were those Alabama teams with Mac Jones, with Bryce Young, all them. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of easy when you have 6 first-round wide receivers all sitting behind each other waiting for you to be a Heisman winner and win the national title. Good for you, buddy. But I do think that Penn State could potentially give them the run. I
don't know that they will.
I don't know either, because the only thing that, and I think most people give a slight against Penn State, is the fact that when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State, they can't get the job done. Now, they kept it close against Michigan, now albeit that was because Harbaugh was out as the coach. I do think they kept it a little bit closer against Ohio State, if my memory serves me correctly. Sam could probably correct me on that if I'm wrong. Now, year before, not so much. They got destroyed.
If I remember correct, and I'll try to pull it up here. They struggled against Ohio State in the second half. I'm trying to pull up their schedule here real quick. I don't remember exactly when that took place or where that was.
See. It was October 21st, 2023. The final score was Ohio State 20, Penn State 12. So they kept it close.
Jeez, I don't know why I can't find it in there. As you said that, I found it.
Of course, that's how it always happens.
It's about right.
In what really we kind of consider a quote unquote down year for Ohio State as far as quarterback play goes. Now, Drew Aller looked really bad in this, but Kyle McCord, he looked fairly solid. Drew Aller was 18 of 42, 191 yards and a touchdown. Kyle McCord, 22 of 35, 286 and a touchdown. So it was a actually pretty defensive struggle. Now, albeit Marvin Harrison Jr., fantastic game, 11 receptions, 162 yards and a touchdown for him. So I do kind of wonder, though, with Penn State, the fact that it's hard for them to compete with Michigan and Ohio State. Now, they kept it close last year with both teams, so maybe that is the step with Drew Aller being the guy. But I think the biggest slight to both of them is the fact of, can they get it done against, honestly, the two biggest teams that are going to matter the most? And all honesty, would they be able to get it done if they have to face Oregon, if, say, they do beat Ohio State or Michigan? Can they go on to face Oregon and beat them and win the Big Ten?
Well, and okay, let's take a deep breath, kids. We're not saying that Penn State's going to beat Ohio State, but you don't get ranked in the top 10 preseason. And granted, we're 3 months away from kickoff. A lot can change. Injuries can happen. The portal isn't open, but people can leave the team or whatever. And, so there are things that can happen that, that totally will take Penn State out of it. But the point being is they're a top 10 team, and they've got the pieces. They have so many pieces there that if they click at the right pace, they could beat an Ohio State. They don't have Oregon on their schedule.
Nope.
Okay. So they would play them. Only time they would play them is in the Big Ten championship game, if it were to happen that way, and let's see, the hardest games, I'm going to say they've got to travel to USC. That's going to be a difficult one. They've got to go to Wisconsin. They host Ohio State, so that helps them. Those are their three hardest games. And now, granted, they're in they're the 3 straight games. They're all back to back to back. With a bye week in there. But at the same point is, those are their 3 hardest games. Not to say they can't trip up somewhere else, but there it is.
I say, honestly, looking at it, I could very easily see Penn State coming out of this as 11-1, with the only loss being to Ohio State. 100%
easily a playoff team.
Easily. Because, like you said, they start off the season, they have to go to West Virginia. I think they get the win over them. They host Bowling Green and Kent State. They should win those. Barring
if they don't, then Penn State's a lot worse off than what we think.
Correct. I think that would probably be the end of the James Franklin era in Penn State if that happened.
You might see him retire or resign at the press conference
at halftime. Oh, I thought it was going to be Avante Davis. He retires at halftime.
Yeah, guys, I'm done.
Then they host Illinois. They host UCLA. And then, like you said, they go to USC, they go to Wisconsin, with a bye week in between. So if they do maybe trip up against USC, they have a bye week to maybe correct it against Wisconsin. They luckily host Ohio State. More than likely, we're going to assume that would probably be the whiteout game. They have to host Washington. Should be pretty easy. Then they go to Purdue and Minnesota back-to-back. And then they end the season hosting a Maryland team, which I'm going to be honest, I expect Maryland to take a step back. They've lost a lot of good players. They don't have Talia anymore. They're going to have a new quarterback starting. So I don't know what to really expect out of Maryland either.
So knowing what Penn State has coming back and seeing their schedule in June, we could conceivably see at worst, Tony, 9-3, at best 11-1, maybe if they get a burr going, maybe undefeated.
Maybe. I could very easily see it. And again, like you said, I think they're very easily a playoff team without a doubt.
As long as they beat who they should.
Correct.
And maybe of those 3 go 1-2, 2-1.
Yeah.
I think they'll go 0-3, I don't think, though.
No. I very easily think they'll go 2-1. Maybe 1-2, like you said. Maybe they lose to Wisconsin. I'm giving them a win against USC. To me, the only for sure loss is Ohio State again, but that's barring if we see any type of really bad quarterback play from Ohio State, which I don't expect.
Those pieces from Penn State really click, and all of a sudden they're the super team in the Big Ten this year.
Correct. Which knowing our luck, that would probably be what it is. Instead of the Battle of the O's, it would be Battle of Oregon versus Penn State. In all honesty, it's going to sound ridiculous. I would love the Battle of the O's. They could call it the SpaghettiOs Bowl.
Oh,
it would be
great.
Perfect. It would be perfect.
Welcome to the Big Ten Championship game, brought to you by SpaghettiOs.
SpaghettiOs. Because we have the Battle of the O's at Ohio State, Oregon. It'd be beautiful. I'm just saying, it would be absolutely beautiful.
But yeah, I mean, so those three teams, I still anticipate it being Ohio State and Oregon that are going to be the top two teams. Not to say that it can't happen with somebody. And you know what? I don't even have Michigan on my radar, but they could surprise you and sneak up there, but I just don't see them having the firepower from their national championship team last year, the amount that they've lost from that.
Yeah. They lost 11 players. They lost Blake Corum. They lost Roman Wilson, JJ. They lost Jim. They've lost a lot of pieces overall on that team. And yeah, and again, if they do, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, they literally loaded up the last few years as far as we need to build a team, win a national title. Obviously, Jim was flirting the last few years anyway, prior to this of leaving to the NFL. He finally did it. So I do kind of expect Michigan to take a
Oh my gosh, I am so happy it finally happened too, because I was so tired of every year saying, okay, when's he going?
Yep, win.
Because you
not
knew
if, it's win.
You knew he absolutely did not. You don't take an NFL interview on National Signing Day if your intention is to stay in the college game. It just isn't. And he'd been flirting hard with the NFL much before then. So I am just glad that it's finally over with.
Yeah, it is nice. It'll be interesting to see how he does with LA. I know you and I both are excited for college football. I can't wait. I know you can't wait. Dalton can't wait. I'm ready for August. I'm ready for hoodie and jeans for this. I say that as I'm about to go down to Texas and be in. I appreciate you being on, good sir.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me back on.
Of course.
I must not have been horrible the first time.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Never. If you guys like what you heard as far as more Big Ten specific college sports, if you follow Big Ten teams or just want to know more about the Big Ten in general, please follow Sam Sprunger at Big Talk. That's B1G Talk on Facebook. You can add a space or not. Completely up to you. He's also on other social medias as far as B1G Talk. If you go to Facebook, they should all be linked there.
Should.
Find them. Keyword
you can also go to bigtalk.us.
Ooh, with a website, huh?
b1gtalk.us.
Ooh, fancy over here. Fancy like a chauffeur. Of course, you can always follow me here on the Military Broadcast Radio and on social media inside the Hoosier Mind. If you like MBR and Military Broadcast Radio, please scan that QR code just underneath Sam to learn more about them, potentially donate, anything like that. I know I would not only greatly appreciate it, but so would they. It helps a lot of veterans get themselves and get their voice on platforms, help teach them, help educate them, and help us have better equipment and give you better quality shows and better quality products. So it's a great thing to have. Hope everybody enjoyed, and we will see y'all later. Everybody have a fantastic night.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting MBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's MikeBravoRadio.us to learn more about how you can donate or volunteer even just an hour a week from your home. Help make a difference in the lives of our veterans, because once again, we're all here for you and not for us. We're giving